This cellular model highlights a strict biological reality. Children are not small adults. The metabolic absorption rates on the left differ significantly from the fully developed pathways shown on the right. Historically, pharmaceutical development relied on off-label adult data for pediatric prescriptions. This left physicians to estimate dosing based on adult responses, carrying inherent safety and efficacy risks for younger patients. The European Union addressed this systemic gap through the Pediatric regulation, codified as Regulation EC No. 1901/2006. This mandate requires a Pediatric Investigation Plan, or PIP. It is a formal development roadmap that must be agreed upon before a sponsor can apply for a new marketing authorization or add a new indication to a patented drug. By tying adult approval to these studies, the regulation repositioned pediatric data as a prerequisite for market entry, making it a mandatory component of the drug's legal path to the patient. Conducting clinical trials on children introduces unique friction. Sponsors must navigate strict ethical limits, small recruitment pools, and the statistical challenges of diverse pediatric age groups. The EMA's Pediatric Committee, the PDCO, evaluates these plans to ensure that any proposed pediatric study is both scientifically valid and ethically necessary. The EMA framework provides specific flexibility mechanisms designed to navigate these development constraints without compromising data quality. Developers utilize 4 primary mechanisms: waivers, deferrals, extrapolation models, and stepwise frameworks. Applying these specific levers allows sponsors to satisfy pediatric data requirements without delaying the launch of the adult indication. Managing a PIP is a high-level clinical strategy that dictates the long-term timeline and viability of the medical asset. All PIP applications, modifications, and compliance checks are managed electronically through the EMA's IRIS platform. Submission requires 2 central documents: a scientific document covering pharmacology and study design, and the Key Elements form, which summarizes the core development milestones. The first strategic step for a developer is identifying if full, immediate pediatric testing is required for their specific product. The PDCO utilizes 2 primary exemption branches. First, the waiver. A waiver is granted when the drug targets adult-only diseases, such as certain neurodegenerative conditions, or when pediatric development is considered biologically inappropriate. More common is the deferral branch. A deferral allows sponsors to delay pediatric trials until they have established safety and efficacy in adults. This protects the adult launch date while pediatric data is still being collected. While it offers flexibility, a deferral is not an exemption from the work. The PIP must include binding, rigorous timelines for when these deferred studies will be completed. Effectively deploying waivers and deferrals carefully separates the rapid adult commercialization from the much slower timelines of pediatric clinical recruitment. Even when pediatric data is mandatory, physical clinical trials are not always the most efficient way to generate it. This is where extrapolation comes in. It addresses the gap between a dense adult dataset and a sparse pediatric one. Extrapolation allows sponsors to use adult efficacy data or data from older pediatric age groups to support the authorization of younger cohorts. To use this method, the developer must present a biologically justified extrapolation concept that details why the drug should behave similarly in both populations. Through pharmacokinetic and pharmacodynamic modeling, developers use computational simulation to fill the remaining data gaps between the 2 sets. This evidence reduces the required size and duration of physical pediatric trials, focusing clinical resources only on areas of genuine uncertainty. This process allows developers to repurpose existing data, shifting the pediatric requirement from a physical recruitment task to a computational one. Traditional PIP planning is often impossible for highly innovative assets, such as those targeting rare pediatric cancers. In these cases, early-stage data is too thin to define a complete long-term development pathway at the time of the initial application. The EMA addresses this through the stepwise PIP. It acknowledges that a developer may hit a hard gate where crucial information is missing. Between 2023 and 2025, the EMA received 27 eligibility requests, adopting only 8 stepwise PIPs. A stepwise PIP is a partial development program that defines only the immediate, data-supported steps of a drug's journey. Developers agree on predefined milestones with the PDCO based on current evidence, rather than guessing at future trial designs. Once the sponsor obtains intermediate data, They hold structured discussions with the PDCO to determine the next phase of the plan. The partial program is conditional. It must be expanded into a full PIP once intermediate evidence opens the path to remaining studies. The stepwise framework allows developers to secure conditional PIP approval, even when scientific uncertainty prevents a traditional long-term plan. Pharmaceutical companies must often align their EU pediatric plans with requirements in other major markets, particularly the United States. Pediatric oncology is the primary area for this international regulatory alignment. The EMA and the U.S. FDA provide joint procedural guidance to help sponsors manage these overlapping requirements. This alignment syncs the submission of the EMA PIP with the FDA's initial pediatric study plan, or IPSP. Submitting these documents simultaneously allows for concurrent evaluations within the pediatric cluster, a group of experts from both agencies. This vital collaboration supports the strategic design of international clinical trials that satisfy both regulators simultaneously with a single highly coordinated study. Harmonizing these dual frameworks removes redundant clinical trials, shortening the path to international market access for critical therapies. Deferrals, extrapolation, and stepwise logic provide the flexibility needed to balance business timelines with pediatric safety requirements. The PIP functions as a customized architectural roadmap that governs the drug's entire development lifecycle. Once the PDCO issues an opinion and the EMA adopts the decision, the plan becomes a binding legal commitment. This leads to the final regulatory verification, the pre-marketing authorization compliance check. Before a developer can submit an application for an adult drug, authorities verify that every measure in the agreed PIP has been followed exactly. Non-compliance can result in blocked market approvals and significant financial penalties for the sponsor. Proactively designing a PIP utilizes these regulatory flexibilities to align commercial goals with clinical obligations. A masterfully designed PIP ensures the fastest path to market, while fulfilling the ethical mandate to provide safe, evidence-based treatments for the youngest patients.